What's the worst thing you almost did but decided against? Came up behind a tractor on the road. Once I decided to pass it, I saw a blind corner, so I waited. Then a semi-truck went by in the other lane. Being the guy in the tractor several times, I'm glad you didn't pass. I started to fall into a bad crowd in my early 20s, and I befriended a girl who worked at the gym I went to. She told me how she knew this one older lady who worked out was incredibly rich and left her locker unlocked, so she tells me that I should steal money from her purse. I'm stupid, and I consider it for a moment, and I ask if there are cameras. She assures me that there aren't. She points out the lady she wants me to steal from, running on a treadmill, and I just can't. I tell my friend that I won't do it. That's not in my nature. My friend tries to entice me into doing so by making grandiose claims that she won't notice it and she knows other employees who have done it. I'm disgusted with myself for considering it. Very nice woman. Not that that should matter, it's stealing. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. The rich lady and I had the same exercise schedule, and I mentioned to her how there have been thefts in the locker room, and she thanks me and tells me how she had noticed things missing in her purse and planned on reporting it. Nicest lady, a teacher who happened to be married to wealth, and I cut ties with that friend out of disgust. Very, very happy that I never went through with that plan. This deserves more credit. Props to you for being a decent person, dude. I had planned to study at my campus library during finals, my sophomore year in college. Being the procrastinator I am, last minute I decided to push it off until the next day. Later that day, there was an active shooter on campus. The spree ended in the library with 2 more people being killed and several more injured. Procrastinating potentially saved my life. One night I decided I was through. Had lost my job. House was in foreclosure. Marriage was on the rocks. Not to mention tons of emotional baggage from a truly fricked up childhood. Had been thinking about it for a few months. Was gonna swim to England, meaning get in the ocean and just swim east until I couldn't anymore. It was the perfect night for it. The moon was just rising, so I could use it as a beacon to keep going in the right direction. I made the mile or so walk down to the beach and threaded through the path between the dunes. If I was going to change my mind, it was here or never. I chose to do it. But the damned beach was crawling with cops. Some on ATVs, some walking back and forth with flashlights. To this day I have no idea what they were doing there. It was like 2 AM. I waited a while for them to leave, but they just didn't. Eventually, the dawn was going to come and I was in no mood or condition to answer any questions, so I decided to go back home. Frick man, speechless right now. Can't imagine what thought you were running through your head this night. Really hope you're feeling better now. Not me, but a buddy of mine. At a house party in high school. One of those where we were younger than everyone by 5-10 years. He needed to pee, but the line to the bathroom was taking forever. I'm like, your man. Pee on the wall out back. On his way out back, we witness a kid being violently walked out by the back of his neck from the back door to the front door, with 3 girls cussing him out. My friend's like, whoa, what did he do? Some party goer laughingly responds, the homeowner caught him trying to pee on the wall out back. He kept his mouth shut and went back to the bathroom line. When we were in 2nd grade, me and my friend were about to go rob a store with toy guns, but I chickened, and I'm glad I did. Edit. He didn't do it because I left. In college, I was at a party without my girlfriend. I ended up hanging out with 2 girls, who were sisters. I mentioned that it was kinda hot how one was sitting in the other's lap. They said something like, we can be a lot hotter than that, and kissed. Instantly, cutting through the alcohol haze, I felt like I needed to get out of there. I could have a very interesting night, but I could never hurt my girlfriend like that. 10 years later, we're still married. I know I made the right decision that night. Full of steel. Stray cats kept harassing my chickens when I was like 10. I decided to get my crossbow, a toy one with like orange bolts with suction cups on the end, stick a sewing needle in the end of a bolt, and shoot it at one of the dang cats. I had a cat in my line of sight with my crossbow loaded, then realized that was probably not a good thing to do. Good for you. The cats were probably just trying to eat and live. Preface: with years of mental illness and a falling apart marriage, it will be 2 years ago this winter. I had just moved to a new town with my wife of a few years. She went to see her family days after we got there, and we ended up separating permanently. I was alone, with no friends, thousands of miles from my family who I wasn't on good terms with. I let her take all the money we had, assuming I would make more in my new serving job. After 4 days with no food, and not leaving my apartment because the job had not called me back no matter how many times I reached out, I sat in my living room alone, with the barrel of my shotgun in my mouth loaded, safety off. My building was empty because the other tenant was out of town. I couldn't stop thinking about how no one would even know if I pulled the trigger. I had no close friends who checked in with me. My family barely spoke to me. The only person I had any real contact with had just stopped being a part of my life. If I could have found someone to take care of my dog, I wouldn't be here. After a few hours of sharing down the barrel of a Remington 870, I decided I needed to feed my dog more than I needed to end my pain. I sold the gun to a guy I found on Facebook Market for $200 and bought a big bag of dog food, a crate of ramen and a ridiculous amount of bologna, and vodka. A lot of vodka. It's crazy how fast things spiral out of control. But the first step was getting rid of the gun. Ended up keeping that job after they finally got back to me with a start date. Made some friends I will have for the rest of my life. Worked things out for better or worse with my parents and siblings. Found a woman who really loves me and have been kicking some ads the last year or so. Got past my alcoholism for the most part and have really climbed out of a dark place. Found a better home for the dog so she would never be hungry again. Take it a day at a time. A few years later I am doing a lot better. I'm so glad you're doing better now. I was really mad at a guy last year and seriously considered texting him, "I hope you go to heck with your dead mother." His mom had died a few years back and he's still hurting from it. It's probably good I didn't say that. A good rule of thumb is to wait a few hours before sending such messages. Since I started to follow it, I've never actually sent anything mean to anyone. Was tripping on acid with some friends, headed to the store to get cigarettes back in like 02. Don't drive on acid, it's stupid and you can hurt someone. It was like 2 AM and on the way there was a city bus parked on the side of the road, engine running and no driver. We stopped and seriously debated stealing it. I mean, how awesome would it be to come back to the party with a bus? We got out of the car and stood outside the bus plotting. Eventually we decided against it because no one knew how to operate it. So we continued to the store where I bought a snow globe, an Eric Cartman wind-up figurine and a rubber skull that when you squeeze its brains pulsates through some mesh. No cigarettes, which meant another trip out to the store. Not having that one more drink. I don't know if it's the worst thing, but younger me has spent too many nights either hugging the toilet or at least too incoherent to really have any fun. Unprotected sex with my almost ex-wife. If she'd gotten pregnant, I'd probably never have left, and I'd probably be dead. Oh come on, you can't just say that without a story. Tell more about her. An ex-girlfriend of mine suggested we have sex once more after we broke up. Whilst I'm well aware this can work for some people, turning it down is one of the best decisions I think I've ever made, if only because it would have dredged some things up that really needed to stay buried. Miss me with that kind of toxicity. Good call, man. I fell for that trap and it was the worst year of my life. Too much unnecessary drama that left me miserable. I almost murdered my abusive ex-boyfriend who was keeping me hostage. I got him down on the ground by beating him with a wine bottle until he was bleeding heavily and couldn't see. I thought to myself, stop now while you can and run. I ran to 7-Eleven, covered in my own and his blood, and just screamed, "Help me." It's between attacking a guy who tried to mug me and had a knife. I ran and roared, bellowed for help, and he bolted. He didn't seem to wanna fight. Hadn't stabbed me in the back as he touched my shoulder when he made contact, and he'd left the bike path that led to a larger open areas next to houses wide open. But the thought of jumping him did cross my mind in that split second. Glad I didn't. Or cheating on my long distance relationship girlfriend with a former FWB. I was so very low that weekend. And frisky. Former FWB who's also low, frisky, and recently broken up with her BF hits me up. We chat. We start talking on Skype. Camera won't work. And we start sending pictures. Before nudes come out, As she's asking if I want her to come over, I stop and realize what I'm doing. We both stopped the flirting right there and talked for a bit. Fire gone. I then hung up on her, called my girlfriend, told her I missed her and loved her and talked about stuff for an hour. Then I cried myself to sleep over what a crappy person I was. When I was with my last girlfriend I almost cheated, but changed my mind at the last second. Would have felt too guilty beating her at Monopoly without following the rules. If your relationship is strong enough to survive Monopoly, you don't want to throw that away by cheating. Sleep with my ex again. We had a baby when I was 16. Got married, got divorced, had another child when I was 21. We only slept together again because it was the only way to get him to pay child support. Yet a couple months ago he was offering to pay child support if I slept with him again. And I'm not going to lie, I was really tempted to. My kids and I could really use that money. 23-year-old single mother of 2, live with my mom, no college education. But I decided against it. Sure enough, he knocked another poor girl up. Dudes need some snipping. Rob a pharmacy after hours. It would have been so easy, all I literally had to do was go in and do it because I worked as a vendor for a store next door to the pharmacy and they shared a dumpster and common exit to the dumpster. Also the door I made deliveries through. The door handle was broken and the top of the frame had rotted and it made the door lean so that the alarm system couldn't be set. They could lock the deadbolt, but with the door frame being broken it was easy to get it off. Could have made a lot of money but didn't. Could have made a lot of money months but didn't. Ftfi. Seriously, good choice. I almost went to a university that would have cost me at least $15,000 per year more than I pay now. The funny thing is that I go to a private university, and the expensive one is a state university. This guy really hurt me last summer. He wanted to go out with me, and I convinced myself to give him a chance. The night before our date, he cancelled and stopped talking to me for 3 months, and when I finally asked why, he practically told me he doesn't date Christian girls or virgins, and was basically being just very sexually objectifying and awful to me. Anyways, by some miracle, his little 14-year-old sister was transferred to my high school, and she was very nice, and I kind of became friends with her. What I wanted to do, and had several opportunities to, was to tell her everything he said to me, but I didn't, because even though he definitely deserved that, she didn't. Almost had a threesome with a couple of girls I used to work with while I was married to my ex-wife. She cheated on me. That's why I failed. Worst mistake of my life. I was going through psychosis when I was unmedicated. During these episodes, I'm uncharacteristically hostile and really easy to trigger. I try to isolate myself when I'm like this to damage control because it's the polar opposite of my normal personality. Anyway, I was alone with my cat and I was getting really pissed off at her getting into things, running around spastically, knocking stuff over, ripping up my blinds, and attacking me. I was trying to keep my cool because she's an animal, but I did put my hands around her neck ready to strangle her. I didn't. I closed her in the bathroom for an hour until we both calmed down, and that was the best decision because when I came out of the psychosis I would have been devastated and disgusted with myself. Probably would have even turned myself in for animal cruelty. Again, complete polar opposite of my normal behavior, and I was absolutely unmedicated and manic at the time. I hope that you're medicated and doing better now. Attempted suicide for the second time. I probably would have had to drop out of college, or Yano died. Luckily I'm doing a lot better now. Can't help but think of Hermione saying we could have died, or worse, been expelled. There is a short, I hope, little background story. We moved to a different country when I was 7. New language, culture, different people and customs, different holidays, different school and kids, no friends, the whole package. I started to gain weight after my horrible stepdad died cause of alcohol abuse. His liver shut down fast and he didn't pay enough attention to it. He also had epilepsy and had seizures, often resulting in head injuries. So, I grew up fat. Not obese fat but some overweight. When I became a teenager I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. Drugs and alcohol was just normal for me at 14. And I was sinking into depression. My grades, no matter how high they were, didn't seem to impress my mother. It was important to me. Her boosts of confidence, those never came. Neither did motivation. So I stopped trying. Being depressed and all. Girls didn't pay attention to me cause I was just fat and weird. At least that's what I thought. In retrospect, I know now it was not the case. Friends were making fun of me, making the obvious remarks about my weight just cause they didn't have anything else to go with, so I just went and hit rock bottom. It was a nice sunny day and I was alone at home. I thought to myself, what could be if I was gone? Who'd miss me? And myself answered to me, yeah, probably nobody. Then I decided to just go out of the house and go sit in a park nearby. The air was humid and the sun was scorching hot. I hate scorching hot. So I sat there for a few hours, thinking of a way I'd like to go to the other side. As I was thinking, just taking pills and falling asleep somewhere, I thought about the reactions of the people around me. Depression does this to you, so I saw them all relieved in my mind. Then, I saw an elderly couple walking by. They were holding hands and smiling at each other, talking peacefully and warmly to each other. He was holding a small single red rose for her and they were happy. Damn it. Damn it, I thought. I want that. I want to grow old. I want my own family. I want kids which I'll teach to be awesome and amazing at life. I want them to be happy, to have the things I've never had. I want my wife to be smiling at her final stage at life when we take our morning walks in the park, since we've done everything in life and can now simply remember the good times past and enjoy the rest of our lives together. I stood up. I went back home, hugged my mother and sat down to play some video games. It's been almost 15 years and the thought, that creepy dark thought, never came back. I proposed this January and she said yes. I'd say, we have our future way ahead of us, but I can see us walking down a small park, holding each other's hands and smiling. After all, life is a beautiful, wonderful thing. It is a gift. Do not waste it and think it for granted. Real or not, this is a touching story and should have more upvotes. Almost didn't declare exterminatus on a planet infested with chaos worshippers. But when I looked upon their foul machinations and heretical rituals, I come to realize I had no right to let them, or any man, live without the Emperor's light. Kill them all and let the God Emperor sort them out. I was on post in NC and it was just me in the guard shack. I was going through some major crap. I was coping with it like any 19-year-old who is away from family and being told he was a crap bag for being 18 pounds overweight, 202 at 6 feet 2. The other MP and me get to this post and he goes off to drive around. It seemed like forever and I was really getting into my head. I pulled my sidearm and put it in my mouth. I then cocked the hammer and had my finger in the trigger. It was at the moment that the other guy came back. I don't know if he saw the way I looked, but he never left again that night, even though he had to do checks. I will never forget the way that the metal felt against my teeth. The taste of CLP in my mouth even after a few cigarettes. It took me 5 years after I got out to tell anyone that story. The first person I ever told was my wife. Since then I have gotten help with the VA and I'm doing wonderful. I was 5.5 pounds from making the worst choice but was saved by a CPL who I thought didn't care. I almost committed suicide a few times at different points in my life. I always had something to help pull me back though, luckily. What is that thing pulling you back? I'm still searching for it. Putting an unloaded airsoft gun to my brother's eye and pulling the trigger as a joke to our other siblings. Had a change of mind for some reason and out it to his leg. Turns out it was loaded. No one knows, but for some reason that's stuck with Kev for the past like 13 years. I nearly joined the Air Force in early September of 2001, just 4 days before 9/11. After I found out I wasn't eligible to be a pilot, I walked away. I had a friend who was pretty into nu metal. He told me of a few bands he really liked, included were Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit. A week later, I went to a record store with my mom, and I was looking for a new record to listen to. My mom told me to pick one just for now. I saw Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water, and I thought, I'll give it a try. But when I picked it up, right behind it was Hybrid Theory. I thought, I actually like that album cover better, so I'll pick that one. Turned out to be a very good decision. Now Linkin Park is one of my favorite bands. right before I tore my friend's pants off to finger her in our friend's kitchen. My brain caught up with my dong. I got drunk here. She was already drunk when I got here sober. No matter how handsy we were with each other in public and sober, it wasn't okay to go that far drunkenly. I was appalled at myself for what I almost did, so I'll let go of her. I was also too drunk to realize that if I was actually holding her up sideways by her waistband, that she's just drop and hit the floor when I let go. I was dating this guy that I was really into, and who was really into me. Very romantic, the sex was great, but something about it just wasn't quite right. So without even realizing it, I just straight up never let him into my life. He never came to my house or got my address, never met my friends or family. He didn't know where I worked. He didn't even know my last name. A couple months in, I realized that none of the stuff had ever come up. And that was really unusual for me. I don't keep people at arm's length like that. I'm very open, and if anything I tend to overshare. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I just couldn't. And I had no idea why. Shortly thereafter, we got in an argument, and he threatened to tie me up and rape me until he got me pregnant. He didn't even know that I was on birth control. I ran like heck, and I was scared shitless that he would find me. So I ended up going to the police because I just didn't know what to do. Turned out they'd been looking for him for years in connection with a bunch of assaults, robberies, and possibly a murder. Rammed the idiot doing 10 miles per hour under the speed limit on the no passing lanes highway when I was already running late for work. I decided that this would just make me even more late, though, but by God, I really wanted to do it. I call those days weekdays. I'm really ashamed to admit it, but frick it, I guess this is some sort of repentance. It was over a year ago, but almost taking my friend's girlfriend's used panties cause they were in a laundry hamper in the bathroom, and I was kinda frisky as frick and had a dire need to rub one out. I held back cause well it was really fricked up to even think about it, and I never tried doing that crap before anywhere nor to anyone else. So yeah, heck no. Haven't finished Monogatari yet, but username checks out. Joining the Navy based on the idea of being a gay guy locked up with lots of men for months on a ship, and it's not that I decided against it at the time. I just didn't make the cut, thankfully. Me and the family stayed at a hotel suite. Normally hotels charge you for the drinks in the mini fridge, but apparently they're free when you stay in the suite. My mom told me to empty it since it was free, so I took all the drinks and stuffed them in my backpack. On the car ride home, I decided to drink a couple of beers. After getting a light buzz, I thought to myself maybe I should do this every day because I don't feel anxious when I'm drunk. For a brief moment of clarity, I realized what I just thought was basically what alcoholism was, so I nicked the beer. My BF I had been with for a few years tried to get me to try coke, Molly and something else. He was hooked on them and wanted me to see why. I was already on oxy doctor prescription and never took anything stronger or not prescribed. I almost did it, but then I realized he'd be throwing everything away. I ended up dumping him 2 years ago and marrying the man of my dreams last October. All he does is smoke weed, never touches anything pharma related. I almost had a fling. I'm the kind of person who likes commitment and stability, and I take all my relationships, romantic and otherwise, seriously. I was in a bad place, had been hung up on the wrong guy for way too long, and I met a guy I was confident I could seduce pretty quick. I knew that he, like me, enjoyed commitment and would want a solid relationship, but I thought I'd just date him for a few weeks, months to feel better about myself and then dump him, whether or not that's what he had in mind. As it turns out, he had very recently been suicidal and was still dealing with a crap ton of depression. Going in with that attitude, I could have really messed him, and myself, up. Instead, I started dating him and ended up really liking it, and I never felt the need to end it. We got married after 2 years and we've never been happier. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video.